Welcome back to our Gruber Motor Company live Tesla-themed podcast. Today we're going to cover some Roadster issues and, if we have time, get into some Model S issues. As a service organization, we see a unique perspective. Starting with Roadster parts, for example. Parts were a challenge even during the Roadster production days. The problem was that no one took Tesla seriously trying to order 2,400 of anything. That would be a fairly small production run. So they generally had problems getting vendors to give them aggressive pricing or to even build custom product for them. The Tesla Roadster buyback program was initiated about a year and a half or so ago. And it was to resolve issues regarding parts shortages for the Tesla Roadster. It was an unprecedented act of generosity by Tesla, actually, to replenish these parts. The problem was that over the years, parts are being flushed out fairly rapidly. And even though Tesla had stocked what they thought was a sufficient supply of parts, they eventually ran out. Some people felt that Tesla didn't order enough parts in the beginning to keep the inventory levels adequate. And what we get from insiders is that the exact opposite was true. In fact, one of the individuals they hired to replenish parts was way too aggressive. So at some point in the Roadster history, they ended up scrapping some of these excess parts, and that's where the folklore and the legendary stories come from, that there were dumpsters filled with Roadster parts outside the Tesla plants at certain points. Let's put this all back in perspective, though. Tesla buying back their own vehicles to continue to supply parts for customers. Have you ever heard of an internal combustion engine manufacturer, an auto manufacturer, buying back legacy vehicles to boost their parts inventories? No, they generally just say, sorry, it's end of life, the support is over, upgrade and buy a newer vehicle. So Tesla had this Roadster parts replenishing program using parts cars, and some of them are sitting at the service centers, which of course creates a whole new problem. Customers show up with their Model S's, X's, Y's, and say, why do you have a partially stripped Roadster out and back? That could be pretty disconcerting for some of the customers. What Tesla, of course, had been doing is parting these out, which had another benefit for Tesla in that when you take things apart, it provides excellent training as to how it was put together in the first place. So the program actually had a dual benefit. Not only did it continue to supply parts for Roadster customers, but it actually trained the service center staff on what's inside a Roadster and basically how it works to some extent. General Motors years ago realized that their 60s and 70s cars were obsolete. They ended up giving some of the dies and molds for the sheet metal parts and the body panels to a company called Year One, which for many years provided aftermarket parts for the 60s era muscle cars. What we're hoping is that Tesla at some point in time follows suit, and anything that they may have left gets either sold or turned over to an aftermarket company that's able to continue to supply parts. Are there any questions, by the way, so far regarding the Roadster parts?
As of right now, no. I'm just FYI, guys. I do have my phone here for question purposes. I'm not texting my boyfriend, just so you know. I know that was a comment that we had in the previous podcast, correct?
We did.
So no. So yeah, I do use my phone to answer your guys' questions on this podcast. But so far, no, we do have hellos from Olympio Gale, and then greetings from California. Hello from Danny Nugent from Southern California. He says he does have a question on roadster parts, so we'll see what that would be here shortly. So touching on that roadster parts, Pete. So how soon do you think, or how quick should Tesla start finding this company to be able to refurbish these parts, or be able to help them out in the long run? Like, what would be the most reasonable, most ethical?
Well, actually, Tesla has come to us for the legacy Roadster parts, and we assist their procurement team by sourcing the difficult parts. The primary reason is not every part on a used Roadster is reusable, and let me give you some examples of that. The air conditioning condensers, for example, that's an aluminum product.
Correct.
It sits in the front and it accumulates a lot of dirt, dust, and leaves, debris. And in the wetter climates, it begins to corrode from the outside. I think the last one we had was a year or so ago that was had pinhole or pin cushion holes in it from all of the dirt that had accumulated in the UK. It rains all the time there, fundamentally. So that's one part that really should not be recycled from a used Roadster. Because a used one is going to be compromised. Now, finding that part has been daunting. We finally were able to source that part, including the 2 fans that come with it. And as it turns out, we flushed out fairly quickly, both us and Tesla, and we have another batch on order now, a much larger quantity. So we will have brand new HVAC condenser assemblies back in stock here shortly. Lock sets. As simple as this sounds, the ignition lock set on a Roadster, the housing is made out of cast aluminum. And of course, at the time, that made sense. It's a lot cheaper than machining a part like that if you cast it. As they age and wear, they're beginning to bind, they're beginning to scrape the keys. And in one case that we had, our leased Roadster, the lock set wouldn't even turn anymore.
Right.
Finding
broke 2 keys.
Yeah. So our sourcing path led us down a bunch of rabbit holes. We eventually ended up with Lotus. And fortunately, the plant manager at Lotus is still there. He remembers the Roadsters coming through his plant. He fondly remembers it, a pretty nostalgic conversation we had. And unfortunately, he helped us to find the part, but as it turns out, it is not a Lotus part. What happened after the engineering and the validation prototypes, Tesla took over that project apparently, found their own vendor to make key fobs, and as of today, we still do not have a solid source for that part. So what we've been doing is buying parts and modifying them ourselves to create at least a temporary part that can be used in the Roadster to prevent that lock from binding up or being able to continue to drive the Roadster. Now here's another item that we've been working on, floor mats. A used floor mat is a used floor mat. That's the reason it's getting changed in the first place.
Correct.
We were actually able to reactivate the vendor that used to make the Tesla Roadster floor mats, and we will have quantities coming in here very shortly, so we'll be able to replenish, and you'll get that new look and feel with your floor mats in the Roadster.
Okay. So from my understanding, so you mentioned Lotus. So Lotus and Roadsters are very similar to each other. So
That is correct.
was Tesla's idea was to create something, was to create an electronic Lotus, like an electric Lotus?
Well, at the time that Tesla got started, they were very small. They did not have the ability to stamp body panels or make body cars, car bodies. So they went to existing manufacturers and they tried to interest them in selling them empty shells, basically, or gliders as they call them. Lotus was the one that stepped up to the plate, was willing to sell them only 2,400 car bodies, and they picked the Lotus Elise body to electrify.
Okay.
As it turned out, It was a bad decision. Elon freely admits this. And the cost overruns were partially responsible for a near bankruptcy type situation for Tesla at the time. They were fundamentally selling these cars eventually under cost, and it was the Tesla Model S that actually saved the company. And by then, they had grown enough to where they were able to build car bodies and build them in high volume.
So financially, it would have been, it was a bad decision financially for Tesla to go in the Lotus route or getting something similar as Lotus, correct?
Correct. What the bright spot is, though, had they realized early on all of the problems they would run into,
Okay.
there would be no Tesla today. The fact that they were ignorant to the amount of costs that would be involved in doing this, and Elon's tenacity and unwillingness to throw in the towel is actually why Tesla exists today.
Okay, but wouldn't it also be beneficial because, like you said, some Lotus parts or Roadster parts, you can find them in the Lotus parts as well, or in the Lotus, company.
Very few.
So,
very
I
few,
mean,
yes.
it wasn't that also beneficial? I mean, there's times where we weren't even able to get a Roadster part, and we were somehow able to get something similar in the Lotus
Yeah.
car or in a Lotus, website or whatever we were able to find in the Lotus source. So, I mean, to an extent, it was also beneficial as well, at least for someone like us that were trying to source out these Roadster parts.
I'm sure that that was the original plan, was to provide the ability to continue to get parts by using Lotus. However, as it turned out, they miscalculated a number of things, including the size of the battery pack and how the car would have to be altered to accommodate that. So today, only 7% of the Tesla Roadster is original Lotus Elise. And yes, some of the suspension components you can get from Lotus, but beyond that, body panels, interior components, the majority of it was custom.
Was custom.
And that's the primary problem today, in that we have a lot of custom product in a Roadster, which is very difficult to replicate. It was difficult to replicate or produce in 2,400 quantities.
Right.
It's even tougher in the 10, 20, 50 or so that we're trying to buy now.
Correct. Yeah, it does make it difficult. So I do have a question here from Danny. It says, I have a Roadster HPC to Model S charging cable. It's broken. Is it repairable? Then he says it's the orange adapter cable. So I'm assuming he's referring to the 110.
Yeah, it's one of the things one of our engineers has been taken on as a project is reverse engineering all of the Tesla charging products, from wall chargers to mobile chargers. Today, yes, if they ship those products to us, there's a high probability we'll be able to repair them for them.
Okay. We do have greetings from Malaysia. It says it's
Malaysia, okay.
Yeah. It says it's 1 a.m. here right now, enjoying the video. Thank you.
Cool.
So hello from Malaysia. Let's see here. Gerald H. If specs and construction drawings were available, would it be possible, economically feasible, to create new parts in a small production run?
Well, the answer to that is we do small production runs by 3D printing, for example, in the PEM, the connector blocks. The molds are long gone. To recreate those is $20,000, $30,000 a pop.
Wow.
And for the amount of PEMs out there that need that at this point, it's just not cost effective. So what we've done is actually reverse engineered it to the point where we were able to 3D print those parts.
Okay.
So some parts can be 3D printed. Over the years, a lot of the engineering drawings and what was at the time intellectual property for the Roadster disappeared for a number of reasons. There are only 2,400 Roadsters and hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of other Teslas. So it's been daunting, but we've been able to circumvent a lot of those challenges.
Doran Cohen. Great job, Mr. Gruber, helping us in Israel, bringing back Tesla Roadster battery pack to life, Doran. Remember?
Well, thank you.
Yes.
Yes, that was, by the way, let's talk about that for a moment. Here was a Roadster fully functioning in Palo Alto at the service center. The car needed to go to Israel, and it was a family car. So the car left Palo Alto, got shipped all the way to New York to get ready to get on a boat during COVID. Lots of delays. Finally, it gets on a boat in New York, travels across the ocean, lands in London, is quarantined because of COVID. Now, bear in mind, roadsters do not like to be without charge.
Right.
But there's no way to charge it in a cargo hold on a ship. So finally, this poor roadster gets to Israel months later, and of course, it's bricked. So we've been working with this customer, coaching them on how to do a battery recovery on this roadster. And by the way, the other thing that makes this roadster unique, it is the only Tesla roadster in Israel.
Oh, wow. So, oh, that's crazy.
Beautiful, very orange roadster. So thank you for joining us, folks.
We do have one question, and I think this is a question that we get quite often from local roadster owners and then just roadster owners in general. Do you know if new 3.0 battery packs has new PEM or just a new board for the original PEM? We get different answers from Teslas.
Okay. We're going to get into the 3.0 battery pack in just a moment, so
Okay.
save that question.
Okay.
There's one more thing about parts, roadster parts. The items that are no longer in production, that cannot be feasibly reproduced, things like the power electronics module. They stopped making those in 2008 in Taiwan. The vehicle management system module, the DC to DC converters, the company was actually acquired and they're no longer making these parts. The HVAC controller, we know who made them. We're having a very difficult time getting the vendor to recreate them based on the quantities that we need. I'm not even sure they would let us buy 2,400 at this point because they're custom. The good news, however, with all of these parts, they are rebuildable. And it requires the upgrading and the rebuilding of electronic components, just like we do with power electronic modules.
Okay.
There is some proactive maintenance that needs to be done with these parts. The electrolytic capacitors, for example, will not last forever. They have an 8-year shelf life. If you skip the deferred maintenance on your electronics, you may end up with something that is beyond repair. And that has to do with parts like these, like the electrolytic caps, shorting eventually, going resistive to the point where they short, and then you may create damage upstream into the vital components, the transistors, the chips that drive them, the driver boards. So, like an engine rebuild in an internal combustion engine car, there is some deferred maintenance that needs to be handled in a Tesla Roadster. If you go to our website, we have a lot of information on the various parts in a Roadster and rebuild services that can be done to keep these pieces functioning properly.
So you're saying inside the PEM, as you mentioned, the capacitors, even with deferred maintenance, they still have that shelf life of 8 years. Whether if you go to Tesla and get your Roadster, your PEM checked or cleaned out, there still is that 7 or 8 year lifespan on these capacitors. So
Sure.
at some point you will have to change them, right?
Well, which gets us into a whole nother question, which is, are these EVs like ICE vehicles, in that you have wear components and you can gauge the deferred maintenance based on mileage or usage? In a Tesla Roadster, in an EV, it's more about the age of the components rather than
Than the
how it's been
miles.
used.
Okay.
So like we said in the last video, you can take a brand new EV, park it for 10 years, and you're going to have a lot of deferred maintenance.
Right.
With an ICE engine, it's minimal.
So you would say that it would be highly recommended for Roadster owners to do a PEM upgrade service that we offer, just because we change all the capacitors, all the contactors, everything that's inside the PEM, as opposed to constantly just sticking with the annual.
Well, yes,
Roadster.
absolutely. We change just shy of 50 components in a PEM during an upgrade. And these are all components that are identified as wear components,
Okay.
something that can fail in the future because it's aging. So getting into the 3.0 battery pack, that was a good question, by the way. What happens to your PEM when you get a 3.0 upgrade? There are some boards that need to be updated. when a 3.0 battery pack is inserted, and it's fundamentally because the cells are different. They have a different charge characteristic. So what Tesla does, they take the existing PEM that's in the vehicle, and they take out the DMC board, and they change resistor values on that DMC board. They also go into all of the battery management boards that are in the ESS pack on the 11 sheets, and they do the same type of modification there. They change some of the resistors to accommodate the charge characteristics of these newer cells that they're putting in.
Okay.
Now, we get a lot of questions. What kind of cells are they putting in?
Right.
We don't know. Tesla is not forthcoming at this point about the origin of the cells or the type. All we know is that they are 18650 cells, which is vital because the geometry needs to be matched. They would love to go to the 2170 cells, for example. It's a larger cell. Now you have issues with the electronics being able to work with the 2170 and the fact that it won't fit into a battery pack. The tolerances and clearances for 18650s between the 11 sheets are fairly tight. And for safety reasons, putting anything but that in there becomes a problem or some risk.
Okay. From the original Tesla pack to the 3.0, what, aside from the cells, is there any other major differences? Like, is there, I mean, from, at least we know, we're very familiar with the legacy pack, right? That's
Right.
something that we can definitely repair, you know, as long as it's not a hard bricked. What's something that's stopping us from repairing a 3.0 pack?
Well, we can repair a 3.0 pack. The reason that you're probably wondering is the few R80 packs that we got that were
Right.
bricked. What we noticed fairly early on was, unlike the old 18650 cells, the 53 kW packs, the R80 packs were far more sensitive to bricking, and the ability to have them snap back with
Was
our
almost
procedures
impossible.
is not the same.
Okay.
So we ended up with one R80 pack about a year ago. It was in the world's only carbon fiber roadster, if you
Right,
remember.
correct, yes.
It was only bricked for 3 or 4 months, but as it turned out, it was hard bricked, meaning that the 11 sheets, only one of them was still usable. The other 10 had bricks that were so low that we could not recover them, whereas in a traditional pack, 3 to 6 months, even 9 months,
Was
these
still
types of cars
repairable.
are recoverable.
Okay. Okay, so, well, yes, we do have a few questions here. And then back to Danny. So the cable he was referring to was the orange HPC cable, not the 110 cable. It's the HPC cable. I don't know if that's the one you were saying that we were able to recover. Because I had mentioned 110 cable, so I think he was like, no. He was like, it's the HPC cable, so I'm not sure if we're able to repair those. I mean, I'm pretty sure we are, right? The
Well, yeah,
HPC
we can
cable?
repair any cable that they send to us. I mean,
Okay.
even down to changing the electrical outlet or plugs that are on the cables. We've commonly done that on the old Roadster UMC cables or the 240-volt cable.
Got it. Okay. Well, there you go, Danny. You can just
yeah.
send us your cable, and we can definitely repair that for you, or definitely diagnose it, of course. And Brent Taylor, any information on when and if the new Roadster will be available?
We know as much as you do because Tesla, doesn't give us any sort of special information
Zero.
about the releases. What you can probably bank on is that it'll be a little while longer. This is a pretty esoteric car. It'll be limited production, and Tesla's primary focus right now, I would imagine, is getting their production capacity online in the various plants that they're building. The Cybertruck, which has a huge amount of orders and backlog, is probably another high priority for them.
Yes.
I'd like to see the Semi and the new Roadsters fit in there somewhere, but we'll just have to wait and see and
Yeah.
be patient.
Unfortunately, they don't give us that type of information here.
Real quick, we got one in here that I think will open it up to the other models of
Okay.
the vehicle.
The-
You see Jim Rustler, 22, he asked the question twice. Jim Rustler, 212, you see that one?
Yes, okay. Jim Rustler 212 said, will Gruber consider offering options to install customer-provided parts such as I bring in a 75 kilowatt battery for my Model S?
We do that all the time. One of the reasons that we get a share of that aftermarket business is there's certain types of aftermarket installations that Tesla service centers just will not do for a number of reasons. So if you want your brake calipers painted red, if you want to upgrade to a higher performance brake system in your Model X, S, Y, 3, those are the types of things that we do. The modifications to the automatic lifting frunk, for example. That's one of the specialties that our shop, that we specialize in. The problem is we're not everywhere, though. You
Right.
have to be in Arizona or
Yes,
near
that is
Phoenix.
the difficult part right now.
And the next question typically then is, when are you going to open up in those other
Right.
areas? Well, there are no firm plans at this point for us to scale what we do. We're very busy here in Phoenix at this point
Correct.
and expanding here in Phoenix.
We do have another question by Olympio Gail, when Model 3s and Ys will come out of warranty, will you be able to do the same type of work on the battery packs that you currently do for Roadster and S?
The answer to that is yes. Our first approach to any of this is reverse engineering. And the fundamental principle there is anything that has been put together can be taken apart, can be analyzed, and reverse engineered. So yes, our goal is to continue to do what we've been doing with Roadsters, which eventually translated into doing what we do with Roadsters with Model S's, now Model X's, and eventually 3s and all the other platforms. And we are not limited, by the way, to Tesla, but at this point, we're so busy with that particular product line that I think we'll be there for a while. But eventually, we'll look at the other EVs as well.
Yeah, I mean, we already started looking at the Model 3s. That's something like last year we had a Model 3 in there. It wasn't battery pack related, but we did do some work on it.
The type of work that comes to us is non-warranty work.
Definitely.
And if it's
Lots.
a vehicle platform that is still young enough to where everything is under warranty, certain vehicles are not, such as collision damaged vehicles, flood damaged vehicles. And those are the ones that eventually come to us.
We do have here, let's see here. David Jones, thanks for all of your work helping keep Roadsters on the road. Those of us on the East Coast, he's in Vermont, need your PEM maintenance services out east. I am scheduled for a 3.0 in early September.
Okay.
Well, congratulations on the 3.0. Let's see here. I wonder if a high mileage aftermarket battery could be developed for Lotus Roadsters, given the relatively small total number of vehicles. Mr.
The
Tom
answer
Wiggins.
that we have for that, can a third-party battery be created for Tesla Roadsters? And if you remember during the dark ages, that was last year,
Yeah.
when there was no clear indication that any battery replacement solution was available for Tesla Roadsters, we were all concerned that 2,000 of these cars would eventually be idled. Independent shops like ours had ample opportunity to investigate and look into developing a third-party solution. There are a number of innovators around the world that have been toying with this. It doesn't appear that there are any of them large enough able to scale to take and handle 2,000 cars. The fundamental problem is the daunting logistics of getting cars from Europe or providing that service in Europe, the change that has to be done to the electronics, the firmware, and the problem that the companies like us faced is we're willing to invest in projects like this if the return on investment is there.
Okay.
But with 2,000 cars, none of us putting this to a spreadsheet were able to see the ROI.
Right.
So the only solution was to continue to do what Tesla was doing, which is continue to use the 18650 cells and find a way to mass produce those. By the way, currently, Tesla is building these 3.0 packs, we believe, in Lathrop, California. And they are continuing to build them by using hand assembly. In the old days, we understand that there was a team of over 40 people that were cranking out sheets for the Tesla Roadster. There are 621 cells per sheet times 11, so you get an idea of how many cells have to be inserted. They had wire bonders that they used to connect the fusible link wires to connect the batteries in the sheets. And currently, that is still the process we believe they are using. There's no automation. To create automation for a gene pool this tiny just is not cost effective. So the most cost effective way currently is to hand build these battery packs.
Wow.
We're all extraordinarily grateful that Tesla has tackled this project, that they're continuing to build these packs. And by the way, as I said in the last podcast, they don't have to. They're under no obligation whatsoever.
Right.
They could simply say, guys, this is too much of a hassle. We want to focus on our newer
On the new
cars.
stuff,
It's
correct.
been nice,
Yeah.
but we're not going to continue support for this old product, which is exactly what happens to us, by the way, in the critical power world.
Right.
You know, when a UPS is deemed end of life, the OEM simply says, upgrade, buy a
Exactly.
newer model. Why are you trying to continue to keep this old beast running?
Right. Right. Correct.
So thank you, Tesla, again.
Yes, thank you for your work. We do have one here. Let's see. Same Tom Wiggins says, if there are Tesla customers willing to pay the high price for such a high mileage battery pack, could such a thing happen for the Roadster?
Well, again, the R80 packs that are being created now is an 80 kW pack, which is an improvement over the 53 kW pack. And based on the geometry and what will fit in a Roadster, that's about as good as it's going to get, unless the 18650 geometry cell becomes even more potent and you're able to pack more energy. And the electronics in the Roadster can be cost effectively upgraded to accommodate that new technology.
Okay. Deep Fried Deal said, have you seen the new 4,860 tabless battery cells Tesla launched this year, and how does that affect your battery repair process?
Well, it's the same answer to that question is once they start showing up at our service center, the reverse engineering process will start, and we'll figure out how a independent like us can provide value.
Okay. Okay, let's see here.
By the way, getting back for just a moment to the 3.0 battery pack project, this question hasn't been asked yet, but Tesla initially addressed all of the customers that had prepaid for that battery pack in 2018 when the first 3.0 launch was done, which was ill-fated because it turns out there were engineering problems and they stopped production.
Okay.
But there were people back then that had prepaid for this larger battery pack and replacement battery pack. They began to service those customers first when they now started making this new 3.0 pack. The second layer was the customers that had paid for an extended warranty for their battery pack. What we weren't sure of was what was going to happen once Tesla satisfied their legal obligations to these two groups of customers. What we're excited about now is they're now reaching out to customers that got on the list back then
Okay.
and asked for a replacement battery pack, even though their pack was still functioning. It was an elective replacement, which indicates to us that Tesla is willing to continue this project, making these battery packs for the Roadster. And the feedback we get, by the way, Tesla talks to us about a lot of things, but this is one thing that they've been tight-lipped about. We don't know much about the 3.0 project yet, other than these things that I mentioned. But if they continue to make them, then a lot of customers are going to be able to upgrade their battery packs. As of yet, there is no list that you can get on or
Right.
that you can subscribe to or any order processing, but we believe that that is coming.
So you did say that they're offering the 3.0 battery packs even if your car is running fine, even if your Roadster is fine. So what happens to the legacy pack once they replace it? I mean, it's obviously a good pack. It's functioning. Like, do you think they'll use that for someone like us that, you know, where we need maybe a few sheets and they'll be able to provide that to us? Or would they just trash it just like they've done in the past?
What we've begun to notice, SB, is that the offers for a remanufactured battery pack is beginning to climb again. We had a customer this morning that said, he's an East Coast customer.
Okay.
I'm not getting a 3.0 battery pack, but Tesla offered me a remanufactured battery pack.
Got it.
So what
Okay.
most likely is happening now that they are addressing the customers that have elected to replace their packs, they're taking their old packs, remanufacturing them, and then offering them as used Tesla Roadster battery packs. The cost differences are roughly $14,000 to $16,000 for a remanufactured pack,
Okay.
and we don't know how long those are going to last. Again, the Roadsters have been around 13 years now. A lot of original battery packs are still going strong. And then the other 3.0 pack is $29,000
Oh, wow.
plus tax. And that includes installation, PEM and board upgrades, the whole thing.
Okay. Alrighty, let's see here.
I think we got one more question, and you guys want me to pull stuff up on the screen for you, or
Sure, let's take another question.
do you see the Randolph one at the end?
I have a 2017 Model S 75, and I'm considering whether to keep it long-term. Can you provide a typical cost for the repair and upgrade of battery to 90 kilowatts?
Okay, the upgrade to 90 kilowatts is fairly predictable. It's around $22,000.
Okay.
Some customers find that a hard pill to swallow because their 2013 car is only worth $25,000 to $30,000. Although if they're attached to the car, they will do that. By the way, we have Tesla Model S VIN number 10 in our shop
Yes,
right
we
now.
do.
That is the
Yes, we
lowest
do.
VIN that we've ever received. We had VIN
Yes.
34 or 36, I think, a while ago,
Yes.
and we own VIN number 69.
Oh, correct.
So we're getting celebrity Teslas in our shop.
Yes, very exciting, by the way.
This is a car, by the way, VIN number 10, that I would highly recommend should never change ownership,
Okay.
because as these cars become collectible, and I believe the Model S's will as well, the early Model S's will be worth a fortune.
How long do you think till they do become collectibles?
Oh, that's a crystal ball question.
Okay.
I predicted Roadsters would happen fairly quickly because it's the car that created the revolution,
Right.
the EV revolution. The Model S may take a while longer. I mean, look how long it took the 60s muscle cars to finally become
A
viable
collectible.
and collectible. They were throwing them away during the OPEC crisis in the 70s.
All right, let's see here. So we do sell Roadsters. We do match owners with buyers or sellers with buyers.
Our web-based free Tesla Roadster matchmaking service. What our function is, we will unite buyers with sellers, and we will post your pictures. We'll give you a professional presentation, and 3 of them sold actually within the last month.
Yeah,
So
yeah, they
it
did.
looks like
Yeah.
Roadsters are moving again. We just
Yes.
added a new one this morning, by the way. This one is pristine. It's got 8,500 miles. It's garage kept. It is a Glacier Blue 2010,
Okay.
and this will make a nice Roadster for someone.
Do we already know the price of it or not yet?
We do. It's being listed for $130,000.
Okay.
So again, it's free, there are no commissions. We even help you select a transporter since we subscribe
Correct.
to Central Dispatch, who has thousands of transporters on tap. And essentially, you tell us where the car is coming from and where it's shipping to, and we will get you bids and pass them on to you.
Correct. And then typically buyers tend to ship it to us beforehand, just so we can do a walkthrough and if there's any services that they would like to do on the vehicle, we go ahead and do it. Most common thing to do is a PEM upgrade. That has been the most common thing after a buyer gets his Roadster. He's like, okay, PEM upgrade, let's do it. Let's go on the way to you.
If they plan to drive their car any length of time, that's a smart
Yes,
thing.
that's exactly.
So the other thing that often happens is the one that got sold in Florida that we
Yes.
posted,
Yes.
on its way to LA, stopped in Phoenix. And
Correct.
the new buyer wants to get it upgraded, so
Correct.
that's
Yes.
also something that often happens. By the way, buyers, let's talk about that for a moment. Yeah, you can sell your car on, what is it, CarMax,
Car Guru, I
Auto
think. there's-
Trader,
Yeah.
there are a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And you'll find that when they post your car, even bring a trailer, they're not really Roadster experts. They do their best. And then oftentimes you have a no reserve sale. That would scare the hell out of me. I mean, I love my Roadster. I want to make sure that I get what I'm thinking I need to get for
Right.
that.
Right.
The first thing is our buyers, and we have 116 so far that we've collected currently, and they keep coming in, are pre-qualified. We know these people.
Right.
They're oftentimes customers. They're in the Roadster community. They're friends of friends, and we get to know them. So you're not going to get the scammers, the tire kickers. These are real live buyers that have a particular goal in mind to get into a Roadster.
Right.
We will also help you with pictures, with videos if you wish. If the Roadster is here, we will do, again, a free portfolio of pictures. If you go to our website and look under Gallery, you'll see the type of work that we're capable of doing. It's first-class photography, and it helps the car sell. Any other questions?
Yes, I actually want to go back, touch base on David Jones here, and I think I can answer this question. And please correct me, Pete, if I'm wrong. So he says, to be clear, even after the 3.0 with PEM board upgrades, are there still PEM improvements we should consider having you do? Example, is Tesla replacing capacitors, etc. So from my understanding, Tesla does not replace anything in the PEM. From my understanding, it's just, they just pretty much air it out, and that's pretty much about it. That's what they do.
What Tesla does currently on the Roadster PEMs is, yes, they do the charging resistor changes to accommodate the new cells.
Okay.
We have not seen any PEMs, and we've opened up ones that they have worked on,
Right.
where anything else has been done, resolving the engineering problems with the insulating material, for example, replacing all the electrolytic capacitors, replacing the contactors, doing the engineering upgrades that we found are necessary. We shared all of this information with Tesla over the last couple of years. We're very proactive and focused on partnership with them. And there are, by the way, other components, even in the ESS pack, that by rights should also be upgraded.
Okay. So yes, David, to answer your question, I mean, we definitely suggest doing a PEM upgrade if and when you do get that 3.0 upgrade on your car, or if you already have it, I strongly suggest it. Just because, I mean, like we mentioned earlier, these capacitors, I mean, have a shelf life of 7 to 8 years, and even if, let's say you do get a 3.0 battery pack, but they don't replace anything in the PEM, so you still have that 7 to 8 year capacitor in your PEM that, God forbid, something were
Sure.
to happen, and then next you know you don't have your Roadster. You have a really good battery pack, but you have no PEM. So yes, I suggest you definitely take in consideration in getting that repaired or replaced, I should say. We do have-
Where a lot of this comes from, and we should probably mention that.
Yeah.
When we first began working on Tesla Roadster PEMs, it was many years ago, we were the ones that pioneered the insulating material problems, for example.
Right.
No one knew that this was an issue, not even Tesla. Crumbling, drying, insulating material that eventually shorts the transistors.
Correct.
The other thing we did, since we come from the critical power world, been in there for almost 4 decades, we applied the same principles and protocols in critical power in the Tesla Roadster. The reason that the two are almost synonymous is a Tesla Roadster PEM is a 3-phase inverter. It's the same thing that lives in a data center and keeps the servers running, or in a lighting closet keeping the stadium lights lit with a 3-phase inverter. It is common practice in that world to proactively replace wear components, and capacitors is a huge one. There is an OEM, whose name I won't mention, that actually used large electrolytic capacitors in their output section of the inverters, and as they would age and become resistive, there were thermal events. There was actually a building in Texas that burned down that was ignited by an uninterruptible power system.
Oh, wow.
So it's, in the electronics world, it's common knowledge that there are certain parts that are going to wear that pose some risk. And those are, again, the protocols that we're bringing into this Tesla Roadster, is those kinds of, that kind of intellectual property and knowledge that we have along with the critical power world.
Okay. We do have one here from Addict. I'm not even going to mention the whole name, but
This is the best part, SB dealing with names. This is the favorite
Yeah, well-
part of these podcasts for me.
well, to keep it PG 13, I don't think I should say this out loud or say this
Well,
on
just spell it.
podcast. But Addicted TOPUSSY 69. Can the 2013 Model S be upgraded with the newest computer?
The 2013 Model S, the MCU2, I think is what he's talking about.
I believe so too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
that's-
those
that's common.
and that's very very common. I believe they even did a recall for that one, correct? For the MCU.
Well, the
Tesla did a recall.
MCU, the Tegra board
The
problem
Tegra
with
board,
the
yes.
eMMC chip, yeah, that there's a recall underway for those, so there may be some warranty relief for this customer.
He also did ask, other than the latest Model S, what year is the most desirable for the S?
You know, the cars that have full self-driving, I think, are the most popular, unless you're not into that.
Right.
If you're into collecting, I'd probably buy one of the Signature 2012s or start looking for those. You'll have to sit on them for a while.
Right.
So it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to, drive it a lot and you like full self-driving, then I would probably stay with the later models.
Okay.
The other question that we often get is, what about deferred maintenance in a Model S? Well, there were some engineering problems. Tesla admits that. For example, I brought some parts here. This is the ferrule out of a window regulator in a Model S and X. They used to make this out of plastic. We ended up making ours out of billet aluminum so it wouldn't snap, and we put a slot in there. I don't know if you can see that. So you can retrofit an existing,
Your face where it's in focus.
in my face, oh, in focus, okay, thank you. So that you can retrofit an existing window regulator. Most of those kinds of problems in the early Tesla Model S's were resolved under warranty. Even drivetrain issues. Do you remember the singing drivetrain? It was in fact, my wife has one of those.
Yeah.
You can hear the car coming down the road. You know,
Yes.
sometimes people turn around and they think that there's a pod racer that's coming at them. Those types of problems were resolved under warranty. So even an older Model S, X, is going to have some of the upgraded components in it. So I wouldn't be too concerned about buying an older one and having lots of deferred maintenance.
Okay. Let's see here. Danny Nguyen said, how much is a PEM upgrade?
A PEM upgrade is just shy of $5,000. There is there's another level which is around $2,900, but it doesn't
Yes.
get all of the wear components replaced.
Okay.
You want to show
There's a website link that
Yeah.
you guys can go to on our website. It's under services, and you'll be able to see the kinds of parts we put into a PEM when it gets upgraded and the reasons for those things getting changed and why it's important. It would be under grubermotors.com under services and look for the Roadster PEM upgrade.
So Pete, I do see you have other items here.
I do. I was going to
What-
bring a show and tell thing here. This is a gear pawl from a Tesla Model S, the presenting door handles. By the way, legend has it that the first presenting door handles cost around $7,200. But Elon, being Elon, said, I want presenting door handles,
Right.
make it happen. So the costs eventually came down as the scale of economies improved.
Correct.
But what happened is, this again is cast aluminum. It's pot metal, basically. So the back breaks out. There's a pin that runs through here, and this gear pawl actually helps the door handle come in and out. There's a lot of stress back here, so it ends up breaking out eventually. They improved the design, and this is the Tesla improved design here. By actually putting reliefs in here, it took some of the stress away from the back of this part. We actually went a step further, and we make this part out of steel, and we machine it. And then we black anodize it so it won't rust. There's another vendor that actually makes this out of stainless steel.
Okay.
And that gets really expensive. You never see it. And if
Right.
the goal is to prevent rust, go steel and black anodize is still cheaper.
So how much longer would something like that last since the material is different?
Well, with a steel piece, there's virtually no wear.
Okay.
It's going to be the life of the car.
Okay.
It was the pot metal that actually created the problem, and a lot of the door handles had this problem
Yeah,
until they
it's a
became.
quite often issue that we run to with Model S's is the door handle not presenting.
And there's also a big difference between independent shops like ours, and it's not just us. If you go to a Tesla service center, they're not going to dig inside your door, take out the door handle mechanism,
Correct.
take it apart, and replace the broken component. It's not cost effective.
No.
It's much cheaper to charge hundreds of dollars for them and swap it out.
Right.
Shops like us will go in there, dig in there, repair it, and do it for less money than swapping the whole assembly.
Yes.
And this, by the way, is fairly low-tech stuff. So there are a lot of independent shops that already are able to do this or will learn how to do this type of repair.
Right, and then, I mean, even customers who are, knowledgeable of their vehicles, who are comfortable or,
Yeah.
Going into the vehicles, we get orders for those all the time, just because they're comfortable in doing it, they can do it themselves. So which also, it's gonna be cost effective for them too, instead of having to go to Tesla or shipping their car out to us just for a door handle part, so
And we're actually competing with ourselves because we do-it-yourself videos.
we do, yes.
And we don't mind providing that service, so a lot of
Correct.
these do-it-yourselfers can watch our videos on YouTube and figure out how to do it themselves.
Okay, so going back to the question with Mr. Addicted here, he said the reason why I asked is because I'm having a hard time finding a Model S P85 without the ridiculously high price. So that's what he was asking us to what Model S or year to look for, what's ideal.
Well, I don't know what a ridiculously high price would mean to this customer,
Okay,
but there are plenty of Teslas for sale out there. What I would urge some caution, however, is taking the easy path and finding the cheap ones at the auction sites,
Yeah.
thinking that it's going to be an easy repair with a collision damaged car or a flood damaged car. We did that for a while.
yes.
During the 2017 hurricanes in Texas and Florida, we bought 22 Tesla Model S's. And on the surface, they all looked like pretty simple repairs, and some of them were. One of them showed up here. It had dried up enough to where it was driving off the transporter. That was the 100D that we bought
Got it.
with 600 miles on it. Then there were others that had barnacles growing on the chargers underneath the rear seats. It was saltwater damage, and they had been submerged a long time. So you have to be careful what you buy, and I would
Yeah.
strongly recommend that if you're going to take that route, fly to that auction house, take somebody with you that may have expertise, and have them go through the car with you. That $1,000 or so is money well spent if it helps you avoid some of the problems we ran into.
So is this because it's an electric vehicle and the auction houses are not very familiar with them, and that is why they don't disclose that much information as to, because typically they'll just say mechanical issues, but is it really like mechanical issues? They don't say, oh, your battery's dead or there's water in the battery. Like, they don't mention that kind of detail, correct?
Well, if you ever take an aerial view, Google it, of these auction houses, the big ones, Manheim, Copart, IAA, they have acres and acres of cars, and they handle literally hundreds of them going in and out every day. They don't have time to do an in-depth analysis. They're going
Got
to
it,
look at
okay.
the surface of it, they'll take some really low-res pictures, and, buyer beware from that
Right,
point
okay.
forward. The second problem is, even with collision damage cars, there's a lot that you can't see. And although it looks tempting to get that late model Porsche, or that Maybach Mercedes,
Yes.
it could be full of problems.
And it'll be a challenge, for
Yeah.
sure.
And then getting parts for those cars. One
Yeah.
of our guys here buys Jaguars, and same problem. But, shopping for a used car, there are a lot of places that you can look, and there are plenty of Teslas available. The other thing you have is Tesla has their certified pre-owned program, the CPO cars.
Okay.
Are they still doing that on their website, guys? Do we know?
I actually don't know, I can try and pull that up.
Yeah,
On Tesla's website?
on the Tesla website, and I believe there's even a warranty that comes with it in their CPO program.
So, and I think another common question that we get for like Model S's is, is a salvage car, a salvage Model S even worth it? What's the risk they run by getting a salvaged car? Let's say they do get it in an auction, and luckily it's a good condition, it's a good car. All they need to do is probably like minor interior or body repair, but it's a good working car. What is the risk that they run from getting a salvaged vehicle or salvaged Model S or X or?
Well, it's an illogical stigma that's been attached to salvage cars. We have a Roadster that's on our website. It's been for sale for 6 months. It has a salvage title. The only thing that made this Roadster a salvage car was the owner was driving down a freeway in LA. A pipe fell off a truck ahead of him. He tried to dodge it. The pipe rolled under his Roadster and put a hole into the aluminum pan right by his feet,
Right.
about the size of a softball. All right? It went to a Tesla service center. They did an appraisal. They decided that the entire frame needed to be replaced on the car. The insurance
Oh,
company
wow.
immediately totaled it. The customer had the foresight to buy back his car,
Right.
took it to a sheet metal shop, and had an aluminum plate pop riveted up underneath there. Now, that car is in no way inferior, compromised, unsafe, but because it has a salvage stigma, the car's been sitting out there for 6 months, and it's priced extremely well, too. So my advice to you is if you want to get into a Roadster and you want a really nice car without any issues, you're going to score if you buy this particular Roadster.
Yeah, and I think that goes for Model S's as well, right? I mean, even if it's a salvage Model S and if it's in perfect condition, I mean, there's no really a downfall for it, correct?
We've had a number of cars come through our shop that were deemed salvage, so they couldn't go to the service center.
Right.
And if you remember, we got a wide gamut of cars in terms of how they were put back together. We had some that had amateur welds, loose parts on them, drywall screws holding on plastic pieces, and then others were done by highly professional shops, you could tell.
Right.
It's going to be a wide range, and the only safeguard that you have is if you can find a shop like ours that will do a pre-purchase inspection.
Okay.
That $500 or so is money well spent,
So we were right at an hour if you guys want to wrap up.
okay?
Yeah.
How many viewers do we have?
We were at 56 right now. We got up to about 70 at the high point.
Okay, all right. Well, it looks like we need to wrap up. Do we have any last-minute questions that look like they're compelling enough to entertain?
Nope, they just want to know when your next live stream is going to be.
Are we going to go for Tuesdays?
Yeah.
All right, so Tuesday next week at 10 o'clock, we'll do another one, and we'll send out some notifications as to what the agenda will be.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram.
Yep, and again, follow up, let us know what you'd like to see more of, and we thank you for joining us, and make sure that you check out our YouTube channel. I think we have one more announcement
Yeah,
here.
one more question here from Mitchell Sink. Have you tried to buy battery covers from Jason Hughes?
Battery covers. No, I didn't know Jason had those, but we'll certainly try that today.
And then also back to Mr. Addicted here. Can I disable the front motor on a Model S to make it rear-wheel drive only?
That seems to me to be just a firmware issue. Yeah, that should be possible.
Okay. All righty. I think that is all that we have for today, and I will see you guys tomorrow at
Yeah.
10.
And we will continue to keep you informed.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
if there's any other questions, guys, just email us at ev@gruber.com. We do have our tech supervisor that can also answer any technical questions, just as Mr. Addicted had here, just to get more further detail. Other than that, we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you. Is this where we do the outtakes?